Thank you for that introduction, Lilia. Thank you to Exactpro for asking me to come and moderate this panel on AI. Something we're seeing a lot of use in RegTech. But I'm not here to talk about what I know. I'm here to let these lovely people here tell us what they know about AI and financial market infrastructures. I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves. So can I start with you, Anne?
Thank you, and thank you everyone for staying for our panel. My name is Giviskos. I'm the head of risk and compliance at Euronext, and that's including topics such as market surveillance, enterprise-wide risk, and data privacy for personal data. Obviously, Euronext, we're a regulated market, and safeguarding the integrity of our market is important, and I think AI and machine learning can really play a role in that going forward.
Thank you. And Iosif, I think everyone knows you, but just in case.
Thank you. Thank you once again for staying with us. My name is Iosif Itkin. I am co-CEO and co-founder of Exactpro. Alexei and I and 10 other people, we've started Exactpro 10 years ago. We do quite a lot of research and also practical application of various machine learning techniques, specifically to software testing. Thank you.
Mario.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mario Quonils. I am the Chief Technology Officer for the LME Group. So we have a clearinghouse, London Metal Exchange, for those that don't know. We have a clearinghouse, which is LME Clear, as well as the exchange for all of the most important industrial metals. So we are undertaking quite a bit of a change in the way how we structure market, and we believe that technology is at the foundation of all of that. So that is what we are doing as a journey right now. Hopefully with AI, who knows? We'll go through the panel to see where we get.
And Vince.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vincent Julia. I've actually had a very long career in the energy industry, 23 years at BP, and then in the renewable energy industry. But I have a passion for technology, and I used to use technology as a child. And a few years ago, I decided to start up a new fintech. So we use artificial intelligence and web harvesting to produce unbiased, data-driven equity research. So we largely service asset managers, but also the exchanges and the market infrastructures are quite interested in what we're doing because we've got global coverage and we are unbiased.
So I think one of my first questions is to unpack a little bit about what we mean by artificial intelligence. It's one of those buzzwords, a bit like DLT and blockchain, that's bandied around by everybody, but I think we really need to do some level setting to understand what it is we actually mean by artificial intelligence. So I'm going to start with you, Vince, given you've been looking at this sort of thing since your childhood. What's your take on what artificial intelligence is?
Well, I think the first thing to say is it's not new. Even when I was looking at it back in the 1980s, I think the techniques had been around for 20 years previously than that as well. My CTO would say, and I sometimes use him to show intelligence because he's got a PhD in it, he says that artificial intelligence basically is just two things. It does two things. One, it categorizes. It's a way of categorizing data. So if a picture looks like a cat, and it categorizes a cat. The other is regression, which is really connecting a series of numbers together by some kind of formulaic process. So I like to think of it in those two camps. There's no intelligence in artificial intelligence. It is a collection of mathematics, but it is very good at processing large amounts of data to categorize and also to connect. So picking up on that point around large amounts of data, exchanges have large, and clearinghouses have large amounts of data. Where are you seeing the adoption of AI in terms of being an exchange?
Right. So one of the things with artificial intelligence is it is advanced technology. And there is a gentleman that wrote a book, which is called Space Odyssey, that says any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. We are not Hogwarts, right? So That means that our regulator, as well as our members, they don't want to see hocus pocus. They want to see specific worth in information validated on data. So yes, we do have large amounts of data, but I don't think we are right now in a capability to properly mine that, and that is where AI could help us. That is where big data has let's say, opened that pathway, and then the cloud has opened it for the compute power to make sure that we can do this. However, getting into the true ratification of the outcomes of those artificial intelligence engines, that is proven to be difficult because they're smarter than humans, and it's the human that needs to back this up. So that is somewhat of our challenge. So we are experimenting with that, just to build a bit of confidence into the outcomes of AI.
And Iosif, what's your take on artificial intelligence?
I think somebody already mentioned it today. So if you look at something written in Python, it is machine learning. If you look at something written in PowerPoint, it is artificial intelligence. So I do believe applying data processing to large volumes of data, so it is the future. It is the most transformational technology out there, and it will certainly impact any area of society. So, and as it is such a powerful tool, it will have both positive and negative consequences. So artificial intelligence is trying to implement using code something that behaves similar to a human intelligence, and machine learning is implementing in software without writing software based on the data.
And Anne, what's your take on artificial intelligence? How are you seeing that potentially at Euronext?
Well, I'm speaking from more of the compliance and regulation angle. So I think there's a huge opportunity. I think the financial industry has taken some hits recently, and if we can apply this potentially correctly, it can reinforce confidence that, let's say from a surveillance perspective, we can understand what's going on in the market better from an abuse perspective. We can add in other types of data and sources like NLP to pull stories together to see what's really going on in the market and to protect our investor, to protect our markets. We just moved to the cloud as well for all of our post-trade data. And I think also we have a lot of, like many of you or people that you know, a lot of data reporting requirements post-MiFID II. So I think this is also a way to help us to have quality built into that process and reduce costs in terms of reporting internally and spend it on other more innovative things like machine learning.
Thank you. So you've touched on it a little bit, but where are we seeing some of the biggest use cases for the adoption of AI in financial market infrastructures? I think I'll start with you, Mario, sorry.
So yes, we are actively trialing this in our market surveillance systems. I think that's right off the bat one of those things where AI is being looked at, and I mean we can detect front running or so everything which is market abuse. That was the largest thing that needed fine-tuning. So we did go live with a new market surveillance system just recently, and in the 3 months of parallel run, it wasn't about making sure the system was up and running, was getting all of the data. It was making sure that it picked up on the specific rules of the exchange itself, and then to see if there are any violations there. So that was a very intensive process, but we are reasonably pleased with the outcomes. And of course, that then gives us courage to start doing in different areas. But mainly, we want to exclude human errors.
And I'm going to pick on you again.
Yeah, thank you. I think other, as well as market surveillance, as Mario just talked about, we would like to see, we have seen a lot of that in the market in RegTech on KYC and AML. So how can we leverage all the data that we have in a more holistic manner across the market? There are other issues that come with that, obviously, that have to be dealt with, but this is a huge cost to the market, but a very important subject in order to manage who we are allowing to be in the market, as well as cyber surveillance. I think this is another area we see a lot of alerts, a lot of false positives. So how can we better analyze the data that we're getting to focus on the right things?
And Vince, where are you seeing the uptake of AI in financial market infrastructures?
I'm going through a learning process on this because we recently started engaging with the exchanges, and they come up with different views of how it can be used. I think if you look at the bigger strategic picture, which I think is typified by the LSE trying to buy Refinitiv at the moment, is exchanges are the heart of an awful lot of data. And the value addition that they can then offer to either their participants or their clients is through providing some insight onto that data. So I see that as one particular angle, but I also see the exchanges are under pressure in that the transaction costs, the challenger exchanges are coming through. So they need to maintain liquidity, and there's a very large move to passive investment, and there's a very large move to private investment. So giving their participants information, insight, and new information will allow them to trade more on their exchanges and continue their relevance. So that is just a couple of the areas of the exchanges that we're talking to are quite interested in.
And Iosif, why would somebody choose artificial intelligence versus other types of technology, and what do you think some of the barriers to that adoption are?
Well, so a few things starting with the data. So it looks like in the modern age it is more beneficial for the companies to process data rather than produce it. If we look at exchanges and current exchange groups, so the part that produces most of the data, the trading itself, has quite a low margin. You need to operate very resilient, high-performance infrastructure, but the margin that you do in this area is pretty small. On the other hand, what you have in index business, where you just take one part of data, apply certain aggregation, and get a different part of the data, is very highly marginal. It is constantly growing in most exchange groups. It will probably be the main source of revenue shortly. It is like the same thing with IT companies, where it is more efficient to process others' data rather than produce yourself. So YouTube is making billions from others' content. So that's why I think people are looking into data processing as a more lucrative area. As for market surveillance as the main application in capital markets, it is extremely fascinating area, because we know that soon everything around us will be software. And the question of whether we can control this software or not is an existential problem for humanity. If we are creating some software and we are not able to control it, it is probably will be our demise. And most of the trading nowadays is electronic trading. So market surveillance system is a piece of software that controls behavior of other pieces of software. That's why it is a playground to design tools for protecting us, for protecting markets, etc.
Just picking up on the theme of surveillance and regulation, and how do you think regulation is affecting the use of artificial intelligence?
Well, I think I can start. I'm sure we all have a view, but we hear a lot of discussion around the GDPR, so personal data. How does that, as Iosif mentioned, how does that audibility trail get maintained in a machine learning or AI software? I think the regulators are doing their own use cases, so they are certainly interested in the subject, and we need to partner with them and work on the way forward with them, because clearly they'll be in the picture. And I think, at least from my experience, when we moved to the cloud at Euronext, we have a college of regulators from all of our jurisdictions, so we work closely as a group together with them to move forward on these types of subjects. So I think it's about engagement, and because we all need to move forward, and we know that.
And Vince, one of the things around artificial intelligence and machine learning in particular is the ability to explain the reasoning and the decision that the algorithms have come up with. What's your view on what explainability means from a regulatory perspective?
I think the regulators have a tough job. I've started 2 regulated firms, and I know how difficult it is to comply with them. Regulators need rules to put their rules around. They need process to put their rules around. So I think where AI will probably have a greater initial impact is in AI that is white box, that you can actually see all the different relationships, all the different processes that it's learnt, and that the regulators can then put a process behind that to really audit and check those. I think the black box, the neural networks, the deep learning is going to be more problematic for the regulators. For them to really get comfortable with those, they will need a lot of trust, and trust only occurs really over time. Not back testing, but actual real applications over time. So I think the regulators have a very tough job in this space. The technology is moving faster than necessarily they can keep up. But I think if you focus on white box and transparent results of the processes, then that will help the regulators get their hands around it.
Do you have a view, Iosif, on regulators and white box versus black box AI?
Well, to be honest, I have some doubts whether ordinary parts of software are easily explainable. So you can probably explain every particular small model as there is a human behind a single, say, modular part of code, a function. But when you look at the systems that have 80 different interfaces upstream and downstream, then they run multiple components concurrently, and there are so many permutations of inbound, outbound data, of reference data, etc. So I think it would not be fair to say that it is easy to explain ordinary software, just software. So I do not see a significant difference between explaining complex distributed systems and explaining software that is based on machine learning rather than a simple coding.
And Mario, I'm going to come to you because I think we started to pick up on some of the drawbacks and risks of AI, but I wanted to ask your view in terms of what some of those other risks and drawbacks are, and how might we deal with them?
The difficult questions for me. That's okay. I think the real advantage that we would see in the markets is when we go black box. Right? Black box has superior capabilities. The biggest problem there is you can't explain them. Right? Humans will not be able to explain how the black box goes. In the past, I've worked with professors at the Darmstadt University, Germany, because obviously AI is one of those themes that universities really focus on. They were having a debate on how many layers does the deep learning in the machine layer need to have to be truly representative. They say 9. 9 different layers. So that is 9 angles that a single individual would need to understand and would need to be able to calculate and compute. That makes it maybe, 0.05% of humanity that potentially could have that ambition to go for that. So that I think is a risk that humans no longer can control it. And then to what degree is this then ethical? Is this prescribed behavior? Is this picking up on wrong behaviors and mapping this out? So to what kind of purpose are we going to use it into society? I think that truly is somewhat of a risk. To come back to regulators, they don't like risk, right? For them, it's a fair and orderly market at all times. If you no longer can have that, then you need to stop your market. As such, that's where we will have truly some issues to push this forward and to use this to regulate the market systems itself.
Thank you. And Anne, given your role is in risk and compliance, do you have any perspectives on some of the risks associated with the deployment of AI and machine learning?
I think the thing I could add, in order not to be repetitive, is it's just the ethical question. So how do you, we see the power of this software, this technology. We see the power of good it can do. We see the power of bad it can do. So ultimately, how do we come together to manage that ethically? And it's a question that I can't answer today, but it's a very philosophical question and something we have to think about with our regulators, with the businesses.
And Iosif, I'm going to finish my questions, then open the questions to the floor. But I just wanted to ask you, the final question is, how can we best find that balance between human and machine intelligence? Maybe something we can all discuss over a drink, but do you have any views on that?
No, to be honest, I do not have any particular view on this one, so it is very difficult to find the balance. I do not think we really understand how human conscience work and whether it is possible to recreate it or not. What is absolutely clear, once again, from ethical perspective, that technology is so powerful that it can severely impact anyone on the receiving end. So if somebody is able to get advantage in this area, it can certainly have negative impact on anyone else. And we know that in the history of humanity, the peaceful times happen when there is a balance between various parties, and in this case there is more compassion to each other and more fairness. But as soon as particular party gets advantage for any reason, then things change to the worse, and AI can potentially create such a discrepancy between parties that can lead to anything. That's why regulators need to constantly look into things like, say, Facebook, Libra, block such things because they certainly lead to concentration of data, concentration of control within particular parties that undoubtedly will have impact on the overall society. And the same is between the countries. Once again, there is always probability that somebody who is investing more into this type of technology will create great global disbalance that can lead to anything.
Does anyone else on the panel want to comment on machine versus human intelligence?
Yeah, I'm a great believer in checks and balances. And as technology, I think just building off what Iosif said, as technology progresses, there is another side of that, is putting checks and balances in the process. And sometimes technology gets ahead of the regulators or get ahead of ethics, but the mere fact we're talking about it is showing that those checks and balances are coming in and that we're trying to tackle it. So I think the technology is amazing. I think I've just the weekend dropped my daughter off at university and thinking about what her future career is going to be, and data and AI will be absolutely at the heart of it. But I think there will be a lot of checks and balances. There will be a lot of technology that can cope with these checks and balances over time. So I'm very optimistic about how AI will end up being embedded and used in our society.
Mario, are you equally optimistic?
I think it will be the whip, right? Somewhat, if we keep on doing the same technologies, if we keep on using the same logic, if we keep on using the same algorithms, nothing's really going to change. Maybe somebody is faster, maybe somebody is smarter about it, where to use it. But it really is something that will then push economy forward, and if we use it as a change engine, and to control a few things, to what Vince says, I think that is truly the future of AI. But I might be wrong, right? If we follow Space Odyssey, AI is a lot more than just that, or Terminator for that cause.
And Anne, are you glass half full or half empty on this?
Even from a compliance person, I'm half full. I think it's not going away, so we have to take it as an opportunity to move forward and accelerate and do great things in a controlled manner. So.
Great, thank you.